welcome to another Mind Blow mini lesson with Miss Huber. Today we are talking about one of my favorite subjects to teach students, which is figurative language. Our I can statement is I can read interesting words of an author and figure out the literal meaning. So notice that it says, I read 1 million books last summer. That's an example of figurative language. So imagine you're sitting with your friend and they tell you this phrase. What would your response be? Mine would be like, no, you didn't. So this would be an exaggeration. This would be an example of a hyperbole. It's not necessarily that they're lying to you. They're just trying to show you that they read a lot of books, okay? Now, was it 1 million? No. But they're just trying to prove to you and make you understand that they read a lot this summer, okay? I'm going to show you some examples of some common figurative language found in novels. And that way you can kind of be aware of it as you're reading and identify your own examples of figurative language. All right, materials needed today: Chromebook, chapter book, figurative language brochure, and a positive can-do attitude. Here we go. Alrighty, so I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth from the common types. So I'm going to define what it is, and then I'm going to show you an example of that type of figurative language. So our first one is simile. Simile is a comparison, so they're comparing two things, using the words like or as. So an example of a simile was, or can be, he was as hungry as a horse. So notice that it has as here. So what the author is trying to tell me is he doesn't have the same appetite and stomach as a horse. It just shows how extremely hungry he is. He feels like he could eat as much as a horse does, which isn't possible, right? But if I read that about one of my characters, I understand that he is starving. Like he needs food immediately. All right, a metaphor, directly comparing two things. So a simile and a metaphor both compare, but similes use the word like or as, and a metaphor just says something is something else. So my example of the metaphor is the place was a prison. So I know that this place that is in my novel is just like a prison. And that's going to help me visualize and really understand how my character feels about certain places or things or other characters in a story. All right, an idiom. This is one of my favorites too. So we say idioms all the time. You may just not know that that's what it's called. But an idiom is you say something meaning something other than what is said. So that's a confusing way to say it. Basically, what you say isn't what you mean for an idiom. For examples, it is raining cats and dogs. Now, if I looked out my window after someone said that and I saw cats and dogs raining out of the sky, then it would be true. But what I'm trying to get people to understand when I say this, or if I see it in a novel, is it's raining really hard, okay? Another common idiom that we use is break a leg. A lot of times we say this to like actors or actresses before they get on stage, or any type of performer, you know, putting themselves out there for people. We always say break a leg. Now, if you didn't know this was an idiom, you'd think I'm a terrible person to say that. But realistically, when I say break a leg, it really just means good luck, okay? All right, a hyperbole is an exaggeration. Now, usually when I teach hyperbole, I do an example, and I have a student like drop a pen or something in front of the class, and then I get down on my hands and knees, and I'm like, no! Right? That wouldn't be a common reaction to someone dropping a pen. A hyperbole, if I can get it out here, is an exaggeration. So you are saying something that is really not the truth. It may be a little bit truthful, but you're making it bigger than it is. A good example of that, and sorry if anyone watching this is like a fisherman, but sometimes fishermen can make hyperboles about how big their fish was, where it was like this, but then they're like, yeah, I caught a huge one that was like out to here, okay? An example of a hyperbole you might see in a book, if a character is talking about maybe their school bag, and they say this bag weighs a ton. Now, it doesn't really weigh that much, otherwise no one could be able to lift it, right? There's no way. But what the author is trying to get us to understand is that backpack or that bag weighs a lot. Last but not least, we have personification. So this is giving human qualities to non-human things. So for example, the trees danced in the wind. Trees can't dance, but what the author is trying to get me to understand is the trees are moving in such a way that it could be like a dance. The sun smiled down on me. Suns can't smile. I've never seen the one outside smile. But what the author is trying to get me to understand is the sun's kind of beaming down or shining on me. Okay, some sentence starters you can use while talking about figurative language. When the author said blank, that means I know blank really means blank because the text said, but I know this means what, okay? Now, I didn't use an example from a book. I just wanted to take the time in this mini lesson to show you all the examples. So for your brochure, you're just going to say what type of figurative language did you find in your text and what you think that language really means. So this was a really quick tutorial on figurative language. Come see me if you need help. But there's figurative language in all your novels all the time. Authors use it all the time. We just don't really know. And once you start identifying that figurative language in novels, you're never going to unsee it. I've had past students, come up and they were like, hey, Miss Hoover, that's a simile, that's a metaphor after I teach about this. And then you really can't unsee it. So it's a really great strategy to kind of be looking for figurative language because when authors use that, they're trying to get us to understand something a little bit better. All right, come see me if you have questions.